I'm going to show you how you can use Service Virtualization to create a virtual service from either a Swagger 2.0 or an OpenAPI 3.0 specification. This method for creating a virtual service is useful when the service you need to access is still being built or is otherwise unavailable. If you have a Swagger or an OpenAPI spec, you can use that to quickly create your virtual service so you can continue your development without having to wait for the service to be completed. The process for Swagger and OpenAPI is identical. DevTest identifies the type of spec that you're using and parses it accordingly. For this video, I'm going to be using a Swagger 2.0 spec, because there is a Swagger spec included with the DevTest install for the Forward Cars demo application. You can create your virtual service using either the DevTest portal or workstation. I'm going to show you how to do this in Portal, but the process is pretty much the same in both. I'll also point out that if you need more information on either process, there is additional information available in the DevTest documentation, and you can get there by clicking on the Help icon in the upper right of the screen. To get started, I want to make sure I have the correct current project selection, which for me is Demo. Then I select Virtual Services on the left, and then Create Virtual Services. From the Create a Virtual Service page, I select Specifications as my method. And then the first thing I want to do here is select my VSE server. In this case, I only have the one, so I'm good. Next, I need to enter a name for the virtual service that I want to create, and a brief description. You can enter a URL for the Swagger or OpenAPI document that you want to use, or you can click Select File to browse your file system for it. If you want to try this out yourself, the document that I'm using is in the Data folder under Examples in your DevTest installation directory. And once I have the document selected, I'm ready to click Next. This screen shows me the MIME type that was pulled directly from the specification, and below that is a list of the operations in the document. You can use the checkboxes on this page to determine which operations you want to virtualize. For example, if you have a document with 1,000 operations, you might not want to make a single virtual service for all of those operations. Maybe you make 10 services with 100 operations each, and you can select the operations that you want to include right here on this screen. For this example, there's not many here, so I'm going to go ahead and leave them all selected. And now that I have the selections I want, I can click Apply. In the Collect Transactions step, I can see the operations that I've just selected here on the left. And on the right, I can see the default request and response for the selected operation. So as I click an operation, the request and response information shows up on the right. If you like, you can modify the requests and their responses. You can also manually add transactions from this field. I'll also point out that at any point in this process, you can toggle into Advanced mode with the top right to get additional options. For example, in this page, you can now remove operations. And you can also see the metadata for each operation. I'm going to turn off Advanced mode and accept what I have here, and then click Next. In the Configure step, you can see the HTTP transport protocol at the top left, and below that you can see the data protocol or protocols that were automatically accepted. DevTest is pretty intelligent and is able to examine the data to determine what protocols are needed, but you can also change these. You can see that the JSON protocol was automatically selected on the request side, but let's say I know the service includes REST calls, so I want to use the REST protocol instead. To do that, I just select it from the list of available protocols and move it over to the selected column. And then I'm ready to click Next. The Configure DPH step lets you modify the configuration of the data protocols. So you can now see the JSON protocol listed here on the left, and there's no configuration necessary for that. But I can also look at the REST protocol, and it shows me the operation identification rules, and I can make any changes I want. For example, I can remove one or more of these operations. I can change the order because they're going to run from top to bottom. And I can also add additional rules if I need to. For this example, there's really nothing I need to do here, so I'm just going to accept the default settings and then click Save All and Next. And in the final step, I'm prompted to save my virtual service. So I can just click Save and Close and come back later. Or I can save and deploy virtual service at the same time. Or I can even save it and then go into Edit Virtual Service mode. I'm going to save and close, and that'll let me show you how to navigate to your virtual service. You can also select the project that you want to save to, and this field defaults to your current project. And that works for me in this case. You can choose whether to allow duplicate specific transactions, meaning you can have multiple responses for a single request. And you also have the ability to automatically create baseline tests, which are headless tests that you can use to test against the virtual service and validate it. Again, if you switch to advanced mode, you can see there are some additional options that show up here as well. But I'm ready to go ahead and click Finish. You can see that the service was successfully created. Now let's go ahead and look at it. So I'm going to Virtual Services on the left, and then Manage Virtual Services. Right now, I only have the one service showing up, but if you had a large list of services, you can filter and sort by any of these columns. And here you see a similar view to what we saw during creation. The operations are on the left. As you click an operation, you can see the request and response information at the bottom. You also have an advanced mode on this screen. So now I can see the arguments, attributes, and metadata. One of the nice things about a virtual service is that I can make changes to that service to test out specific scenarios without having to touch the live system. So you can change any of this information, redeploy your virtual service, and see how those changes impact your system. Speaking of deploying, let's take a look at that as well. To do that, I go back to Manage Virtual Services. I can click here and select Deploy. Now I can configure my deployment options again. I only have one VSE server at the moment, so that's good. I can assign a group tag to make it easier to filter my list of services and then monitor multiple services together. Think Timescale defines the response time behavior for the service. I'm going to leave that set at 100%, but you can modify this if you want to introduce a delay to mimic the behavior of your application. I'm all set, so I can click Deploy, and you can see that it deployed successfully. And now I can go to Virtual Services on the left, and then Monitor Virtual Services. And you can see that the virtual service is here, and it's running and available. And now you can direct any traffic here that you want to send to the service instead of to your live system. And that's pretty much all there is to creating a virtual service from a Swagger or an OpenAPI specification.